Hey everybody. So this is like a 3.5 month update. So this is what I sound like, and this is what I look like a whopping 3.5 months on testosterone. Um, as far as physical stuff goes, it's just more of everything. So like more hair, more deepening of the voice, a lot more facial hair. um, Other than that, I mean, it's there's nothing new. And actually, I have kind of made a decision where I think I want to stop updating so much about physical changes. Maybe I'll still probably update about mental and emotional changes because I feel like that stuff isn't really talked about a lot of the time among trans guys, and especially like on YouTube and stuff. But yeah, I wanna stray away from doing updates on physical stuff, and I want to talk actually more about stuff that I've been having issues with as someone who does consider themselves a feminist and a queer activist. And a lot of these issues are issues with my own trans community, or trans guy community, I should say, at least. Um, and I mean, I think that the community is fairly new in terms of visibility. So I understand that, like, in a lot of ways, we're still kind of getting our bearings, and we're still kind of like figuring out where we would belong in like the cisgendered straight world as well as within the queer community. Because I think like we get rendered invisible in both communities. But that doesn't mean that we can't be critical of ourselves. And I think that we really should be critical of ourselves. So I guess this time around, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, lately I've been going back and watching YouTube videos of guys that I used to follow, like a couple of years ago when I decided that I am transgender and that medically and hormonally transitioning is something that I wanted to do. So I've been going back and keeping up with these guys now that I'm on T, and also just trying to like compare, not necessarily physical changes, but I mean, there's some stuff mentally and emotionally that I wanted to see if anyone was talking about. Anyway, I got sucked into the YouTube world of trans guys and just started watching videos in general, and I kept coming across something that really kind of upset me for a lot of reasons. And this something was that there's like a number of guys out there who are doing videos or writing blog entries specifically about passing tips. And first of all, I have an issue with the term passing because I think that it implies that you're trying to be something that you're not. Okay, so that's my first issue with it. And the second issue with it is that it also implies that there is a certain way of being. So in this case, there's a certain way of being male or read as a guy. And if you don't meet that criteria, if you don't meet that standard, then you are failing as a guy. So I think that's really hurtful for our own community to constantly use word passing and to set this like bar up as to like whether we pass or not, whether this guy passes or not. How can I better pass? So I think like language needs to be shifted, and we sort of need to like direct ourselves away from the word passing and maybe reword it as like getting read as my desired gender. Because let's face it, there are many different ways to do gender out there, and there's like an infinite number of genders out there. So I feel like the term passing is also setting up, or reinforcing rather, a binary. So anyway, when it comes to these videos, I've noticed that a lot of them sort of replicate really macho and hurtful masculine ideals. For instance, I was watching this one video, and it was this guy that was giving passing tips, and he was saying that one of the ways that you can try to be read as your desired gender as a guy is if you walk a certain way. So then he proceeded to like show exactly how to walk, and as he was walking, he was like, you gotta walk with confidence and you gotta walk with swagger, which I agree with. I mean, I think anytime anyone walks somewhere, it should be with confidence. Like, you should be proud and you should be happy of who you are. The only issue that I took with this is that the actual walk itself came off as kind of threatening. It was like super macho John Wayne type of walk. And I mean, I have issue with it because I feel like a lot of the times it's just macho posturing, and it's sort of, you know, it isn't about being comfortable with himself, but once again, it's about adjusting to this binary and reinforcing this binary and trying to fall along the binary. Um, and it just ends up looking really hyper masculine. And like I understand that like as trans guys, like it can get really frustrating sometimes to not be read your desired gender. And you want so bad, especially if you're not on testosterone, to be read as your desired gender. But I think a lot of the times in our own community, it ends up producing this sort of amnesia where we forget about however many years we spent being socialized as female, and you know, within this constant misgendering, also um, probably at some point have been victims of you know, things like sexism and misogyny. So when I see trans guys that are reinforcing these hypermasculine stereotypes, you know, like puffing out their chests and walking around like super fucking macho, it's sort of, I mean, well, it doesn't sort of, it actually very much angers me. And I mean, it angers me because I think it reinforces these really sexist notions, you know, of like men are to be seen and they're to take up space, whereas, you know, women aren't supposed to do any of those things. And for, you know, another example that I had seen in one of these passing tips was like, guys sit a certain way, you know, they sit totally slouched and they sit with their legs like far apart, like they take up space with like the lower half of their body, and you know, stuff where it's like if you have to act like you have like the biggest cock between your legs, and that's problematic. And I think in a lot of ways, like not only does this reinforce sexism, but it also reinforces rape culture, because if you're walking around you know, looking male and coming off as taking up space and looking threatening, frankly, I mean, you're going to reinforce rape culture. You're making women feel unsafe in a culture in which they have every right to feel unsafe. And you're not exactly helping to ease that. And so I think that when it comes to passing tips, and when it comes to tips like this that sort of reinforce macho culture, that we as trans men have a lot of things to unpack in terms of conditional male privilege, in terms of even how this hurts our own community, because once again we're buying into the binary. You know, we're saying that we have to stray away from looking feminine, and the opposite end of that spectrum is to look hyper masculine. And a lot of the times it comes back to bite us in the ass, because it's these very binaries that hurt trans communities when society denies us, you know, rights, and denies us everything from jobs to access to healthcare, because they're saying that like you know, for whatever reason, sex and gender are the same. And I think we know that that's not true. So we have to stop acting like, in order to be seen as this gender, you have to act like X, Y, and Z. And you know, it's not leaving room to envision any type of genders in between, and it's not leaving room to envision, you know, even cisgendered men that don't do this, cisgendered men that don't walk around like John Wayne, or don't take up a large amount of space. You know, like for example, another passing tip that I've seen is if you want to get read as male, you need to bulk up. You need to work out like 5 days a week, and adding muscle helps. I mean, I think that's really hurtful also to cisgendered men, because cisgendered men come in all sorts of body types. Like, I know cisgendered men who have hips. I know cisgendered men who have beer bellies. I know cisgendered men who are chubby. I know cisgendered men who are super, super skinny, like skeleton skinny. Um, so yeah, like I think that just hurts men in general by saying that you have to look buff, and it's buying into this really Western idea of masculinity. You know, it buys into this masculinity where you have to look cut, and you have to act a certain way, and you have to be a certain way, and if you're not a man. So with that said, like, I know that it can also be frustrating to not get read as your desired gender, And I know that I also have the privilege of being on testosterone, and that's obviously helped a lot with when it comes to me being read as male. Uh, so I don't really have any tips for those who want to be read as male. The only thing I can say is be yourself, because chances are that there's a cisgender dude out there that either looks exactly like you, pretty much, or acts exactly like you, or carries themselves like you, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And just sort of the only tip that I can give is from my own personal life. Like, whenever I feel super dysphoric, like, about my body, and I'm totally convinced that everyone can see right through me, and everyone still thinks that I you know or still reads me as a woman, rather. What I like to do is just go to a public place and, like, watch people, but not, like, in a creeper way, or maybe in a creeper way, who knows. But yeah, I like going to a public place, and I like watching guys, and just taking in, like, the different kinds of body types, and the different ways that guys walk, and different ways that they dress, the different ways that they do their hair. I mean, some guys even paint their nails. Like, there's nothing wrong with any of that. There is no right way to be a man, but I can tell you that there's 100 wrong ways to be a man, and a lot of those include reinforcing rape culture, being sexist, and being a misogynistic pig. So hopefully, I mean, these are kind of things that I want to continue talking about, instead of being like, whoop-de-doo, I found this new hair on my back. Because there's so many YouTube channels out there where guys track their transition, and I think that I'm coming from a very specific subject position as someone who identified as a feminist queer woman of color who is now identifying as a queer man of color. And I have a ton of things to talk about in that respect, that I think that a lot of trans guys either don't want to talk about, or don't know about, or just totally deny their privilege left and right. So yeah, like, if you have any thoughts, you can respond to this, I guess, in the comments, or maybe even make, like, a response video. But other than that, that's just kind of the issue that I have with passing and passing tips, and I will probably be back in about another 2 weeks talking about something else. I think the next thing I want to talk about is male privilege, because I've been getting a lot of that lately. I get read as male pretty much 24/7, and it's really weird to have everyone assume that, well, first of all, that I'm male, but that I'm a heterosexual male, because I was, part of the queer community for so long, and it's really strange to flip over on that end and have everyone just address me as a straight guy. So I'll probably talk about that in my next video, but until then, I guess I'll see you later.